Okay, so welcome everybody to the latest webinar session from Care First. The session is titled Social Media, Technology and Young People, Tips for Parents, but the overall webinar aim today is to provide some support and information for how young people are accessing and spending their time on technology and social media and stuff at the moment during the lockdown restrictions due to coronavirus. So a lot of the information is general, it's transferable to lots of different scenarios and situations, the current situation and lockdown, but also for future reference when everything's back to normal, etc., and stuff like that. So yeah, that's what the session we'll look at today. And just to kind of paint the picture of why we've created this session and to put it into perspective, really. Nearly 3 million children in the UK own a smart device, and the amount of children accessing social media has more than doubled in the last 3 years. Gaming is the most common smart device activity for 8 to 15-year-olds, so that's the most common activity that young people are doing on technology at the moment. And children accessing the internet through their phone has increased 22% since 2012, and that's continuing to grow. Obviously, with technology, etc. I remember years and years ago we had dial-up internet and one computer in the corner of the living room, whereas nowadays there's multiple devices where we can take them out of the room and go upstairs and stuff like that. So more children are accessing the internet privately rather than when in the company of their family. So that's kind of setting the scene and painting the picture of why we want to talk about this sort of content. So quick question for the room, and it will give me an opportunity to kind of pause and have a little look and see if we've got any difficulties with the audio or any problems. What do you think is the average age a child gets their first smartphone? So please feel free to share answers in confidence. So just what age do you guys think children get their first smartphone? So I'll wait for a couple of answers to come in, and then we'll read them out. So we've given a couple already. So I'll give you a few more seconds just in case anyone else wants to share an answer. When do we think a young person gets their first smartphone? So we've got a range from 6 up to 10. So if you said 10, you're spot on. So 10 is the average age a young person that gets their first smartphone. But the next question for you is, what do you think is the average age a child joins social media? So they've got their smartphone at 10 or around that age. When do you think they first join social media? So they're not just using their phone to text parents and let them know they're in safe or home safe or whatever. When do we think the average age a child joins social media is? So I'll give you guys another few seconds. Just have to work out the answers. So a couple of us are saying 10 straight away. We've got 11. We've got 13. The answer is 12. So 12 is the average age a child or a young person joins social media. And that's interesting when we put it into the perspective that the minimum age for a Facebook account in particular is 13. So you could say a lot of young people are joining Facebook earlier than they should be from an appropriate perspective. And one of the things we wanted to look at, before we get into the kind of the tips and the guidance and maybe some of the worries and the pitfalls of children having smart devices and technology and stuff like that, or overuse of those things, or what are the benefits of a child having a smartphone or device. So please feel free to share your own insights here as well. But I've just put a couple together, which I'm sure will resonate with a lot of people, because there are a lot of positives and benefits to the young people in our lives having a smart device or a phone in particular or things like that. The biggest thing we pick up on is emergencies. So obviously, if there are any issues or problems, you can get in contact with them and kind of sort that out and resolve that situation. You can stay in touch with them generally. So, for example, if we've maybe got older children and they're away for study and stuff like that, access to information and studying. A lot of young people can access content and information online. Not possible for some households and some families, but perhaps there are obviously other ways that they can access information and studies through libraries and friends, etc., stuff like that. We can monitor their content and what they're seeing. So from a safeguarding perspective, we can see what they're doing, who they're speaking to, what content they're viewing, etc., stuff like that. And we can also track. So if they're going away or they're on holiday or they're on a school trip or we work away or we're working a lot of hours, that sort of thing, just kind of seeing what they're up to, where they are, just in case there's any problems. So there are lots of benefits and lots of positives to, the young people in our lives having technology, social media, phones, etc. But obviously on the flip side to that, we wanted to look at what some of the worries of a child having a smartphone or a smart device are. And these are some of the things that we found online, some of the things we've asked parents at Care First to see what the biggest worries for them are. Who they're speaking to and potential online grooming is definitely kind of the main one that pops up. We mentioned earlier that the most common activity in people 8 to 15 is gaming. That can sometimes lead to gaming addiction or generally just social media addiction and spending too much time online, and that online usage having an impact on their mental health. Something simple as cost of replacing. So a lot of young people nowadays, it's a lot of competition of who's got the best games, who's got the best clothes, who's got the newest trainers, that sort of thing. So young people are maybe more inclined to lose and drop and break things, etc. So the cost of replacing those items can be sometimes quite high for a household, for individuals. There can be cyberbullying and trolling online. So it's not just in the playground like it was when I was younger. Kids can still communicate online, and that can sometimes be in a negative way. It can have a huge impact on the physical health. So if we are spending too much time gaming or we're spending too much time inactive online, we're not doing the activities and exercises that help develop us physically throughout those young ages. And also that could lead to social isolation or, the people skills not developing if they're spending a bit too much time on social media, on games, online, and not out and about, having a good balance of those things. The one thing to think, though, is that we are in a world where technology and social media is prevalent and is really one of the things that's at the forefront of communication and engagement, etc. So we want to find the right balance between, developing people skills, having good physical health, but also still utilising those technologies and those social medias the best way that we can do. So before we look at the top tips, wanted to put some reasons on the slides for you to really understand why we created this session. So we looked at some of the stats of how many children are online and when they're getting their phones and when they're joining social media, etc. But I'll give you a few moments just to have a little read through these for yourself, because I think some of these figures are harrowing, are shocking, sometimes could be worrying, etc. So it's good to be mindful of them, not get too worried about it, and just have a little think about some of the tips that we're going to look at over the next slide or two of how we can help. The ones that jump out for me, especially the first one, 87% of children do not have parental restrictions on their smart device. So in terms of content they're viewing, etc., who knows what that is. 46% of parents say they're unaware of the safety tools to protect their child's phone. So again, hopefully that education of parents is a step to help safeguard young people and what they're doing and what they're seeing online. So our top tips for safeguarding and protecting children. So we talked about cost maybe being one of the factors and the issues and downsides of technology and replacing things. So there are different sources out there. For example, iPhone, Apple has a dedicated refurbished section. Obviously, CEX and shops like that provide second-hand things. So you might want to think about buying a refurbished or second-hand device, because it's probably still going to do the same thing, and if it breaks or cracks, it's going to be a damn lot cheaper to fix than a brand new phone. So that's something we can think about there, which is a bit of a practical tip. At home, we might be able to set Wi-Fi limits on our router, or we might just have a little kind of time away from Wi-Fi. So we can say to the kids, yes, you can play your PS4 or your Xbox. Yes, you can be online and chat to your friends. However, between 5 and 7 or 6 and 8, we're going to have a no Wi-Fi zone. We're going to have dinner as a family, or we're going to have a chat, or we're going to have, this, or read a book, or go out and exercise, or do something that time can obviously, work within whatever your lifestyle is. So it might be setting Wi-Fi limits at home. You can also speak to your network provider about setting data use limits. So if you have got a young person who's got a phone, obviously you want them to have that and be able to access things online and also be able to connect with you. But you can set data limits, so they can't go over the limits, which can sometimes lead to increased bills. I know certain networks, they allow you to share data, or they keep a certain amount of data in reserve for emergencies, that sort of thing. Be really mindful that any filtering or parental controls that we have on our device or we have on our home Wi-Fi network aren't on the device itself. They're on our particular network. So if we, for example, have a parental block on our Wi-Fi at home and we can't access, adult content or gambling content, for example, or distressing content, if I was then to go into, a public Wi-Fi or a Starbucks Wi-Fi or something similar, for using them as an example, I might be able to then access that content there. So that's something to be mindful of as well. And obviously you can speak to your network provider, not just about data limits, but also setting those parental controls so you can't access gambling or just, just inappropriate content, that sort of thing. We want to encourage children to join clubs and societies and partake in physical activity and social engagement with friends, as well as doing those things online. And also try and get that conversation started early with your young children or goddaughter, godchild, or niece and nephew, about blocking or hiding unwanted content or people, so they don't see that distressing content, they don't see those negative words or comments, etc. You're aware of who they're speaking to, what they're talking about. That dialogue is open and is clear between you as the kind of parent or guardian and that young person, and making sure that they're not speaking to anybody they shouldn't be online. Kids are tech savvy, so we want to get that conversation started early. And what I would do is maybe encourage you to have a little bit of a kind of a Google or a research of your phone device, because on Android, on Apple devices, for example, there are particular apps which allow you to monitor or block apps and things like that. So on Android, for example, Android Parental Control is an app which allows you to safeguard and kind of stop them downloading certain apps and seeing particular content. So little things like that might be really useful to kind of safeguard children generally, but especially during this lockdown, because they're probably spending a lot more time online and on technology than they normally would do. One of the regional police forces actually shared this on a tweet a few months ago, and it's 15 apps that parents should know about. So you're kind of aware of the logo or the name of the app, so you can see what they're looking at, what they're on, if you think it's age appropriate for them. So for example, dating apps might not be age appropriate for younger people, so if you see a young child on those sorts of things, that allows you to start that conversation and explain that it's not appropriate and things like that. So I'm going to skip over this slide. I appreciate that everybody's gone through all of these now, but I'll talk about the slides and get them shared out again at the end for everybody. Just a few resources that could be really helpful moving forward. So these are a few websites which kind of expand on the content we've gone through today and talk about the things that you can do and the tips you can take away. Obviously, we've scratched the surface on this session, but these things can definitely provide a bit more information and a bit more resource. So again, I'm going to skip over to the next slide, but I can come back to them if you want to take a screenshot or a picture, or I'll talk about how we can get the slides out to you a little bit later on, or the article. And one of the things to think about at the moment now is education for young people during lockdown. So there's obviously, children of non-key workers aren't at school at the moment. Yes, your individual school or college may well be setting homework or things that kids can do. But from my involvement with young people through coaching outside of work, I understand that it's not a full school day that they're doing. They have got pieces of work, but sometimes they're getting a bit kind of frustrated with it, or it's a bit monotonous, or it's not too challenging or engaging. So just a few websites that you can tap into of your own accord, which might have some supplementary information, things that you can extract and do with your children to help with them to kind of stay engaged, stay motivated, keep learning during this time, so they're ready when they go back to school. So a few of these sites are obviously age specific. So Primary Resources is targeted at primary kids. There's a couple in there which are GCSE level targeted. And I remember the BBC Bite Size website many years ago when I was revising and studying at school and college, and I really enjoyed that website. So the Bite Size section of the BBC website's got lots of content as well. So maybe some useful sites and resources there for you to pull some information off and help engage and just add to what your kids are doing. That then might give them the break from kind of gaming and social media and stuff like that. Challenge them mentally alongside other things that we might be doing physically as well. And we've captured a lot of our content from a study and an article that was done with Kent government, but also with Carphone Warehouse as well. So obviously market leading seller of technology and phones, etc. So they combined and put something together to provide support and information for parents around young people using devices and using technology. So if you wanted to go into a bit more detail of the information in this specific webinar, this is where we got it from. That's a link to a live PDF, which I think you should still be able to access to just expand and go into a bit more detail the things that we've spoken about today. So that's everything from me. So thanks very much for taking the time out to join the session. Hopefully you found it beneficial and useful. Feedback's always appreciated, positive or critical, constructive, because it's going to help us to add content in and improve the session for future reference. Hopefully you're aware that we're also running other webinars as well. And next week's COVID-19 webinars that CareFirst are running are being communicated out to your organisation today. So please keep an eye out for them. And if you have any questions, just to let everybody know, I've popped my email address in the chat box. So if you're unable to download the slides or the article from the handout section because you're getting an error message, please drop me an email and I'll happily send through the article and the slides again for you to have a little look at. But if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the questions pane, and I'll be able to answer these now. Absolutely. So just a reminder for the guys who have asked the question, my email address is in the chat box. So if you check the chat, you will see my email address in there. So if you can't download the slides from the handout section of the webinar, please drop me an email and I'll send those out to you after we finish today. And I've just gone back to the resources section just so somebody can take a picture of it. But when you get the slides through, you'll be able to copy and paste the link from them. So that might be a little bit easier than typing it out. So feel free to drop me an email as well. But thank you very much for the appreciation and the gratitude, guys. Very much appreciated. Hopefully useful. And any questions or queries, feel free to get in touch with me or any of your regular service managers. Purposely haven't put the number of the service up today because we've got lots of different people joining the webinar who have different phone numbers for accessing CareFirst.